Hola, cage fighting connoisseurs. This is KidNativeBloodyElbow.com, joined by Michael Hutchinson. Tito Ortiz, final fight, chokes out Chael Sonnen, 2 minutes, 3 seconds, rear naked choke. Pretty much utter dominance. Chael threatened a guillotine. He gave up position. He swept, got taken down by Tito, swept him, went for the front headlock guillotine, rolled over onto his back, never had full guard. Ortiz escaped, took mount, couple punches. Chael gives up his back. Tito chokes him out. Really more of a crank than a choke. Never really got into the chin. And I got to say, Chael the choke Sonnen. It's a classic Chael Sonnen performance. All talk leading up to the fight. Tito, great way to go out in front of his hometown crowd. Your thoughts?
That was a pretty awful performance by Chael Sonnen. That's what I think. I have no idea what he was thinking, what he was doing when he was on the ground. Basically just giving up the mount to Tito Ortiz, who, like, you don't want to give up the mount to Tito Ortiz. And then again, not even getting choked. It was a neck crank. He kind of like just kept his arms down there. It reminded me of Nate Diaz, Conor McGregor, where it's kind of just like he gave him the choke. It was really weird. I don't know what to think about it.
Well, it's like Matt Lindland, Chael Sonnen's longtime teammate, said. That's why they call him second place Chael. He's just got a knack for choking in the big fights, just like in his high water mark of his MMA career when he almost beat Anderson Silva, took him deep into the 5th round before he fell into a triangle choke. Chael Sonnen is a guy who is incredibly talented, incredibly gutsy, but in the biggest fights and the biggest moments, he's always found a way to lose. That's why he's never had a major title, and that's why at this point it looks like he never will. And Tito Ortiz, what a way to go out for a guy who had a great career and has been on a downward spiral for a long-ass time. I was really happy to see that.
Yeah, it's great. One of my greatest memories of Tito Ortiz was when he choked out Ryan Bader. That was just like oh my God, he did it. And this one obviously wasn't as crazy, but it was definitely nice to see him get up on top of the cage and celebrating with everything. It's one of those moments that kind of gives you goosebumps, gives you flashbacks of old fights. And I think that's a great way for him to go out.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's good, at least from the story he's telling before the fight, to hear that his personal life is going well, that he's got a steady relationship, he's taking good care of his kids, he's put the whole Jenna Jameson drama and all that behind him. So it's a happy ending, and for a guy who's done an incredible amount for MMA. I mean, I remember when Tito Ortiz was a young punk, beating up Jerry Bolander, beating up Guy Metzger, getting his ass kicked by Frank Shamrock in one of my favorite fights of all time, but then going on to beat Wanderlei Silva and had a Hall of Fame run as UFC champion, light heavyweight champion, beating Ken Shamrock in some epic matches that put the Zuffa pay-per-view operation on the map. And then losing to Chuck Liddell and Randy Couture, fighting the fight against Ken Shamrock on Spike that got the biggest ratings the UFC had up to that point, getting enormous pay-per-view numbers, losing to Chuck Liddell in a rematch. I mean, just had a great career, but then almost a decade of sputtering, injuries, losses, humiliations, like the time he was supposed to box Dana White and didn't show up and all this stuff, and his attempts to be a fight announcer. I was happy and yet sad to see him not say any malapropisms in his post-fight speech. But part of me is kind of disappointed that we didn't get any classic Tito-isms here. But a good night for Tito, good night for MMA fans, bad night for Chael Sonnen. Any final thoughts on that fight?
At the end of the day, he was the greatest middleweight of the night. I think we can say. Oh no, wait, he's light heavy. Never mind.
Yeah,
no.
That was some Tito right there. That was nicely done. Nicely done. Yeah, I don't know. The one thought about this is that Bellator doesn't have Tito Ortiz to use to get ratings anymore. And that You've got to look at their run with Tito. They had him for the last couple of years of his fight. Classic way, it's just classic sports phenomenon that an all-time star of the big promotion will often move down a step, either like in an NFL, you might be, somebody runs out their championship legacy with one team, then gets traded to somebody else for the last couple of seasons. And then in MMA, you obviously move down to Bellator. But they had him. He beat Alexander Slemenko, that fight I don't think did anything. Stephan Bonner beat him. That didn't build anything, but it was a very good fight. I mean, it did very good numbers for Bellator. So it was a win,
Yeah,
but didn't
it
add
was
up
a
to anything.
stinker of a fight, though.
Oh, yeah, it was a stinker of a fight, but nobody really cares at this point. I mean, I don't even know that anybody really remembers that fight, but it got good ratings for Bellator when they needed him. Then he lost to Liam McGeary, and the idea there is to put some rub off the old star onto the new guy. Mm-hmm. But that fight didn't have any heat whatsoever. I mean, McGeary just didn't show any personality in the buildup, and then he goes on to lose to Phil Davis, so kind of a fizzle.
Yeah. I heard somebody say it best is that Bellator is the way that old fighters go to kind of retire on their own in a good way. So if you're washed up, if you're kind of done, you get cut by the UFC, you go to Bellator and retire in a good way. You're not going to get knocked out cold. You're not going to get embarrassed like if you're in the UFC, but you got to do what Tito did. He kind of gets to go on his own on a victory in a very nice way. And I think that's what Bellator is going to be. It's going to be a place for up and coming fighters that don't really make it to the high levels of the UFC, and older fighters to go somewhere to fight, but not get knocked out or embarrassed.
Yeah, maybe so. And you got to, the thing with Scott Coker, he keeps pulling cards out of the deck. He's got Fedor Mitrione coming up. He's got Rampage. He announced Rampage Jackson versus King Mo 2, which there hasn't been enormous hunger for that fight, but Coker has a limited number of cards in his hand, and that's a pretty good matchup to make.
Yeah, well, he has another card from tonight, Paul Daly against Rory McDonald.
Yes.
Hell of a fight.
Yes, that should be a very interesting fight, and much better, I think, than Michael Venom Page versus Rory McDonald. I don't think Venom Page is ready for that. But let's run through the rest of the main card. First, we had lightweights, the Battle of the Derricks. Derek Campos beat Derek Anderson, unanimous decision. Pretty good scrap. Thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I thought it was a great scrap. A lot of people had it really close on their scorecards. But yeah, I think that Campos was the better fighter in that fight. Anderson was doing good at the beginning of the fight, kind of getting at range, but Campos kind of just wore him out throughout the fight, was landing bigger shots. Neither fighter could keep their mouthpiece in their mouth. I don't know why, but
that was odd. That was one of the most mouthpiece knockouts I can recall seeing in a fight.
Yeah, but then again, the only things that happened in that fight were them getting punched in the jaw. So, I mean, I'll take it for the amount of violence that was in that fight.
Yeah, it was a very violent fight and quite enjoyable. Then at featherweight, Emmanuel Sanchez beat Georgi Karakhanyan. Majority decision. One ref had it a draw. There was a point deduction. Kind of a mess of a fight. I was disappointed. I thought Karakhanyan would have done a lot better. Sanchez put on a good performance, though. Nothing against him. But what the heck happened in there with the point deduction?
That was just extremely weird, because I believe it was Sanchez who initially had the illegal upkick, right?
Yeah, that's my recollection.
Yeah, and then he was illegally kneed, and so then the point was taken away from Karakhanyan, and then people were just like, I was thinking, maybe he should go back and deduct a point for the upkick, but it's one of those weird
retroactively
things.
Do that.
You can't, but it's one of those moments where it's just like, well, maybe because this foul just happened, then I won't take a point away. Or as a referee, you kind of have to be just like, if we're playing on an even playing field, maybe warnings to both of you, kind of like in baseball. One pitcher gets hit, okay, nobody gets thrown out. The other team does it. All right, warnings to both benches. Next foul, it's a point.
Yeah, but I think the difference maker was that Sanchez did the illegal move twice, and so the two illegal knees. I think that's why he did it, but it did. I don't know. It's just yet another jacked up MMA fight. But I felt like Karakhanyan was flat.
Mm-hmm.
And had more hype going in, so a little disappointing there. But then you had middleweight Hisaki Kato beat Halleck Gracie, unanimous decision, a much booed fight. The first 2 rounds were pretty painful, but in the third round, Gracie got him down, had mount position, but couldn't get the finish. So it's one of these situations where I feel like Gracie won the fight. The fans lost the fight. Kato outscored him in the sporting contest, but didn't really do anything to Gracie.
I saw somebody tweet that the beauty of jiu-jitsu is that in real life, at the end of the day, Gracie would have been on top of Kato and he would have beat him. But this is
Yeah.
MMA where there's 3 rounds. So basically, jiu-jitsu worked really well if he was trying to survive that fight. But in the end, he did nothing for 2 rounds. His stand-up looked awful.
It was
Like
exactly
the
like
first
Royce
30
Gracie's
seconds,
stand-up.
the first 30 seconds, he was just jumping up and down like this, like going around. I'm like, oh my God, he's going to get his ass kicked. And then
Yeah.
Kato was just kind of like, oh, like, damn, what's he going to, don't want to charge in. I'm like, oh my God, just knock him out.
Yeah, it was really frustrating to watch that because Gracie's stand-up looked like it looked exactly like his Uncle Hoist Gracie stand-up from 1993. I mean, it was the same stomp front kick and just bad. And Kato seemed to have, I mean, he outpointed him, but he wasn't going for the kill. And I was just very frustrating. But obviously with the Gracie, you got to worry about if you just get carried away, you're going to get clinched, get taken down, get choked out. So it is what it is, but not, I don't know, not very entertaining. And even the most undiscriminating casual fan has got to be picking up on the fact that the Gracie name in a fight no longer means much of a guarantee for entertainment. I mean,
Yeah, it's just not going to be good. It's either going to be 3 boring minutes of just hesitation from each person, or a Gracie getting knocked out, which
yeah.
is what people were hoping for, and it didn't
Some
happen.
people, I'm sure the Gracies were hoping for a submission. So, but anyway, but the next fight, welterweight Paul Daly against Brennan Ward,
Yes.
knockout, flying knee, first round, 2 minutes 27 seconds. Ward actually fought a pretty good fight right up to the point where he caught an incredibly fast flying knee to the temple.
Yeah, like both guys were rocking each other at different points. Like it was one of those fights where like, damn, this could go just 3 rounds of like back and forth, or just like a 1 round like Paul Daly, Nick Diaz, and then just out of nowhere, the spinning back elbow and flying knee, like that was brutal. That's one of the worst flying knees, as in like worst violence wise, that I've ever seen. That
Yeah,
was
it didn't
just,
crush his skull, unlike the Venom Page to Cyborg
yeah, but it gave him
Santos.
whiplash. He just like boom,
Yeah.
just
Oh, it
flew
was a
back.
beautiful, beautiful flying knee, and Paul Daly definitely. I didn't feel like Brennan Ward was really going to didn't have that greatest shot, and wasn't. I felt like Ward was being fed to Daly, even though on paper it looked like a fairly even matchup. And now they have a big fight with Daly coming up.
Yeah, well, that's the good thing, is that you put Paul Daly in this type of fight where he's either going to put another great knockout on his resume, or you have another guy who uses Paul Daly's name to continue, and then Paul Daly doing what he does, gets on the mic afterwards, setting up his next fight. And I mean, who wouldn't want to see that fight, Daly against McDonald's? It's two fighters that we've never thought about crossing paths because they've never really been in the same promotion, the same area at the same time. So now that we're thinking about it, it's just like, damn, that would be a banger.
Yeah,
That'd be a
this should
nice
be
fight.
should be an exciting fight. Roy McDonald, obviously, more exciting early part of his career. Got a little more cautious towards the end of his UFC run, but I don't think you can be that kind of cautious against Paul Daly. And surely McDonald realizes in Bellator, might as well let it fly out. He's got much less to lose than he did in the UFC.
Yeah, exactly that. But I mean, what are his last 2 fights? He got pretty messed up by Stephen Thompson with the jab to the nose over and over again. And then the Robbie Lawler fight, obviously taking years off of his career.
And his
McDonald
life.
might be a little gun shy going into a fight. Like if I was Rory McDonald, I'd want to take a fight against somebody like Damian Maia, super good on the ground.
Yes.
You know that your face is going to be a little bit prettier even if you do lose. Against Paul Daly, I mean,
Yeah.
that's a big risk to take for somebody who's had 2 back-to-back hard fights where his face got fucked.
Yeah, very true. But he's in Bellator. He's probably one of the better paid guys on the roster, and pressure's on, kid. They need stars, and this Daly and McDonald is definitely a headliner. So, from undercard stuff, Kevin Casey beat or drew Keith Berry in I've never been a Kevin Casey fan, but thoughts on that one?
Kevin Casey. I actually missed that fight, but
Oh, really? Casey dropped him early, beat the piss out of him in the first round, and then just coasted and let him come back over the next 2 rounds and turned it into a majority draw. Really frustrating. Then you had featherweight Shinzo Machida, the little brother of former UFC champion Lyoto Machida, knocked out Hamara Ocampo, third round. Ocampo did a really good job of beating him around most of the first 2 rounds, but just got cold, knocked out in the third. And then that was pretty much the only undercard fights I had any interest in. But so anyway, it was a real treat to get to see Tito Ortiz. I've been watching this kid for 20 years, went from an up-and-coming menace, the chip off the Tank Abbott's shoulder that was just cleaning house, annihilated the Lions Den. And at the time, the Lions Den was one of the top camps in MMA. It was Ken Shamrock's camp. You had Frank Shamrock, Guy Metzger, Jerry Bolander, Jason DeLucia, all these guys who've been regulated in pancrase in the UFC for a long time. And Tito just annihilated them and was one of the first guys to really make a huge use of weight cutting in MMA and the UFC, which double-edged sword for the sport for sure, and we're still dealing with the aftermath of that, but you cannot deny that Tito Ortiz had a Hall of Fame career. Hopefully, is he already in the UFC Hall of Fame?
Yeah, he is.
Okay, good. Yeah, because if at the terms they're on now, they would never put him in the UFC Hall of Fame. But
I think he was one of the first 4 or 5 guys to go.
Yeah, and that's the least they can do, because the UFC really, Zuffa built it on Tito's back. I mean, later Chuck Liddell and The Ultimate Fighter, and on through George St. Pierre, Brock Lesnar, et cetera, et cetera. There are many bigger stars since, but Tito was the first to make money for Zuffa, and also one of the guys who kept the sport going during the dark ages when they weren't on cable and many outlets at all, and were almost driven completely off pay-per-view. So hats off to Tito Ortiz. Again, Chael Sonnen, he did his job, man. He made it a spectacle. He increased the fight interest. He choked when it came to fight time. And
perfect Chael Sonnen performance.
Yes, a definitive Chael Sonnen performance. He's a man we love to hate, but his pre-fight pattern was really on point. I mean, I feel like he hasn't lost his step as far as talking shit, and I couldn't even tell if he'd really lost his step against Tito Ortiz. I look forward to Chael having more of these senior league kind of fights. Although, who's on the roster that he could mix it
I was
up
just thinking as you were saying that, I don't know, Stephan Bonner still in Bellator, is he long gone?
I don't know what Bonner's doing, but he was the one that came into my thoughts. So
I can see them having entertaining back and forth. That's pretty much it, though.
Yeah. But, again, familiar names and some entertaining pre-fight hype, and that's enough to get you through another Spike TV card with decent ratings. So that's what Scott Coker's got to do. He's building his promotion. Started at a point when the UFC essentially had a lock on MMA talent at the highest level, and he's done very good to slowly rebuild. And we'll just see what he can do. So thanks for being on the show, Michael Hutchinson. What's your Twitter for people that want to follow you there?
It's at the Mikey Hutch.
At the Mikey Hutch. And I'm at Kid Nate. We're both at bloodyelbow.com. Subscribe to MMANation.com on YouTube. Subscribe to MMA Nation on iTunes. And that's all our plugs. Eugene will have a Knuckle Up tomorrow. We'll have all the regular shows. We've got a UFC on Fox card coming up, so we'll have all the Care Don't Care preview, MMA Vivisection, all Michael's short videos. So, adios, MMA aficionados. Thanks, Michael. We'll see you next time.
See ya.